Work in progress. I don't know if you can take yourself back to school for the kids. Obviously, you're still there, so I'm sure you're enjoying that. But one of the things I struggled with in school was when you had to write a story. And I don't know, did anyone else struggle writing a story? Or just there's a few? Okay. So, like, I didn't mind writing an essay or researching something, but to write a story, and it just seemed really hard. And apparently, and I never really read a lot of novels or anything like that growing up. I don't really know if I've really ever read a novel. I think there was Goosebumps, but I don't know if they were really novels. But apparently, to write a story, and I don't know if this is right or not, but there's some key elements that you need in a story, like a plot, characters, setting, conflict, and point of view. They are the 5 main characters when you write a story. Is that right? Yep. Okay. Anyway, so recently I was just sort of reading the book of Esther, and we're going to go there, and hopefully I'm going to be able to go through and share some things I got out of it as well. And I know going back, I must have said a while ago at Kangaroo, that there was a theme out of the book of Esther as well for that camp. I don't know how many years ago that was, but anyway, this story has everything, like all of those elements, and it's true. It happened, and I was just sort of, reading it and going through it and just thinking, wow, it's just amazing. You've got everything here. Like it's better than watching, any movie or any form of entertainment. Just reading the book of Esther for me, it was sort of like, oh, this is a great read. And what I love about it is you see God work through and His plan work through some very hard situations as well. You get to meet the enemy. Through reading the book of Esther as well, and see how they are looking, to plot against, Haman in particular, who I'm referring to, against God's plan, and then you see the Jews in particular. We're going to read about Mordecai and Esther, and just how that they are able to conduct themselves when they're challenged in these areas as well, and how that they are willing to, be prepared even for their own life's sake to, just to want to see God work in a situation. So I found it very faith building for me, and it just because I don't know if you feel it, but at times maybe we're presented with challenges and we get to hear some good news, and sometimes we want to hear some bad news and whatever. But when you see how these people respond to bad news and how they act upon faith, it just sort of lifts you a bit. So in chapter 1, we're going to go down to verse 10, but we're going to read about a king here who's had it's got an empire there, and it's a vast kingdom from India to Ethiopia. So I believe probably parts of Asia, Africa, Middle East, and so I don't know the Medo-Persian Empire how much they haven't done the research on it, but obviously it was a growing empire and well established, taken over the Babylonians as well. And in the 3rd year of this king, he wants from a celebration. He wants to make a feast there to the princes and the servants through the land. And 180 days he's going through showing his riches. I think I could probably do about 30 seconds showing, our riches, but 180 days he's got to show his riches to these people. And we read about his wife, Vashti as well, the queen, also made a feast for the women. So they were catered for too. We'll go down to verse 10. And on the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded, I won't go through these names because I'll definitely pronounce them wrong, the seven chamberlains or officers that served in the presence of Ahasuerus, the king, to bring Vashti, the queen, before the king with the crown royal to show the people and the princes her beauty, because she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. And verse 18 says, Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew law and judgment. And so what's happened here is the king's gone to speak to the wise men as well, because Vashti, when she's been called upon to come out and the king's put this celebration on, she hasn't come to be looked upon by all these people, and so the king's quite embarrassed about it, like he's angry about what's happened. We don't know why Vashti didn't come out. She was probably having a good time with the feast that she was preparing, and with the women, and the guys were doing their things as well. So not too sure, but obviously there was a concern for the precedent. I suppose it would affect the empire as well. That all of a sudden would the women and their marriages, would they not listen to their husbands anymore because the king's asked for her to come out, and she's sort of decided not to come out, so whether it would set a precedent. So there was a concern, and the idea that they came up with, the wise men, and the king was pretty happy about it too, they decided to have like a beauty contest for all the fair young virgins, and the winner of the beauty contest would win being the queen. So it seemed like it was going to be quite a good win for everyone involved, except for Vashti, the current queen there. So go across to chapter 2. And in verse 3, and let the king appoint of his officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hege, and the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti, and the thing pleased the king, and he did so. So, so it went through that all these young ladies were going to be in this beauty contest that I assume they wanted to be in it. And it talks about purification. So when I had a look at the word, in the King Strong's Concordance, there's soap, perfume, bathing, cleansing. And in this process, it was like 12 months of purification. So I wonder what type of work was actually happening, these ladies were involved in for them, because 12 months to get clean is a long time. But I mean, I've got pretty dirty rendering and working on a few things before, but I've never needed to go to the bath for 12 months. But anyway, that was the process. I'm sure there was other things which were happening, and we can go down to verse 12. Yeah, let's go there. Now, when every maid's term was come to the king, Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the woman, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit 6 months with oil and myrrh, so oil and perfume, and 6 months with sweet odours and other things for purifying of the women. So it was quite a lengthy process to be prepared before being able to go in unto the king and for him to make his decision of who would win this contest. And we'll go on next. Verse 17, we read about the winner, and the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favour in the sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. So Esther here becomes the new queen. She wins the contest. But in verse 5, I just want to read a little bit about Mordecai and Esther. It says, "Now in Shushan, the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity, which had been carried away Jeconiah, the king of Judah, who Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter." So Mordecai and Esther were Jews, and Esther had lost her parents, and Mordecai, who was her cousin, took her to be like his daughter. So this is the I suppose the character of this is the lady who wins the contest. And then later on down, where am I going now? Verse 21. So I'm just going to run through the story, so you can read it properly later. It will sound a lot better than listening to me. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains or officers, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth and sought to lay hands on the king. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when an inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out therefore they were both hanged on the tree, and it was written in the book of Chronicles before the king. So these two officers weren't happy with the king, and they wanted to assassinate him and get rid of him. And Mordecai had found out about it and told Esther, and then Esther tells the king, and these guys they lose their life because of that. So if we go to chapter 3, so we'll maybe have a look at Mordecai and Esther a little bit, some of their qualities later on. But in chapter 3, we read about Haman, and so we'll start to read about this enemy. We'll see why. In verse 1 it says, "After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of that person, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, or reverence, worshipped him, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass when they spoke daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And so, Mordecai had made a stand here that, obviously he was worshipping the God of Israel, and he wasn't going to bow down and worship Haman. And so for those others around about, and the explanation he gives is, well, I'm a Jew. We don't do that. And so these people aren't happy with Mordecai's explanation. And then Haman, you read about him, not being too excited that he's got everyone else bowing down for him, and I don't know how many else, maybe there were others which weren't, but it really annoyed Haman. And we read in verse 8 how much it really annoyed him. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of the kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. So they, so in listening to Haman now, I wonder if the Jewish people, they had still like a testimony or integrity about them, for the way that they conducted themselves, neither keep the king's laws. Therefore, it is not the king's profit to suffer them. If it pleases the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hami, whatever it is, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And so, because of Mordecai not bowing, all of a sudden Haman comes up with this idea, let's get rid of all of them. And so he goes to the king and he gets the permission from the king to set up a way of destroying all the Jews and getting rid of them. So that was his plan. And we go down to chapter 4. So once again, just sort of saying, what the enemy, is trying to accomplish, destroying the Jews, and how is this situation going to, be resolved? And one of the things with Esther is that she actually hid her identity. So it wasn't known to Haman or the king that she was a Jew. So let's pick up in verse 8. So at the start of chapter 4, you read about how Mordecai finds out about Haman's plan and the Jews also, and it's just incredibly, devastating and unsettling for those people. There's people, weeping, crying, wailing, fasting, laying in sackcloth and ashes, and you think about the children of Israel, the Jews at this time, what they've been through as well, that they've, heard of the God of Israel and seen God work through, the times before, and now that they're in captivity here as well, and living with other people, and it would have been a very hard time, and now they are, there's a decree, sort of been written, there's a writing there that they're going to be, wiped out, and it would have been, crushing for them. And so, for me, sometimes I'm sure it's the same for you. You might have a hard day or whatever, but it's not as bad as this. And yet, God is still able to work. And so, verse 8, Mordecai, I won't read it for time's sake, but wants to speak to Esther about the situation as well. And we've go to verse 10. And so they're communicating through someone here as well. And again, Esther spoke unto Hatak and gave him a commandment unto Mordecai, all the king's servant and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. So Esther had a concern with approaching the king, that if she went into the court and had been sort of called by the king to go into the court, that if the king didn't want to see her, she could be killed. And going off the track record of what Vashti had done when she decided not to show up when she was summoned before to at the feast there, I suppose Esther had reasons to be concerned of how would the king react to her coming in. And so she verse 12 says, and they told to Mordecai Esther's words. In verse 13, then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace, and at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So I suppose with Mordecai, you see the encouragement that he gives to Esther as well. And just sort of getting to know through these scriptures the character of Mordecai and Esther as well. You see Mordecai's love and care as well for Esther, and you see that he is a man that loves God, and that he has a care for the Jewish people as well, and he's a man that acts on faith as well, and believes God will work in the situation too. And when we look at Esther too, she's she's a quite an amazing character, because she won the beauty contest, and not many people win the beauty contest. Esther won it, and so she's been lifted up and becomes the queen in a vast empire, and went through 12 months of purification, and probably feels great, and all of a sudden, there's a need to do something, and I feel that Mordecai, when he was looking after her, when she was growing up too, must have treated her well and taught her things too, and maybe even though it was through hard times and troublesome times, that she was inspired to love the God of Israel too, to do good things, and to not seek to serve herself, but rather to think about what was really important. And it sort of, I suppose, it gets you thinking a little bit. For me, it gets you thinking about your own life too. Not that I've ever won any beauty contest, but definitely, wouldn't come close. But you feel, the joy of being able to be, set free from the world and where the world's going, and to be able to come to know the living God, and to be, part of the family of God as well, and to see, the joy that God brings to people's lives. And sometimes you can get, I don't know, you can maybe go down to camp and you just Carrigalinga or Kangaroo or wherever you go for a camp. You can just love being in that place of fellowship and good times, but people are struggling, or maybe in a way that they're going to perish without us doing something about it. And I had a moment yesterday, just over lunchtime. I went for a run, and actually I live close, so I was running down that way there, and went to the path, and it was blocked off because they were doing some work on the Bellarine Trail, and got speaking to the guy in I don't know, he wasn't a lollipop guy, or 5 years or whatever, and when I ran up the hill and come back down, I was just stretching out I was getting tired, and I just stretched out my wrists a bit. For some reason he goes to me, and you praying to make it home, and he obviously knew how I was feeling, but and I kept running. I acknowledged his comment and had a bit of a laugh with him, but as I was running, I was just like, why don't I speak to that guy, and I kept running away, and I thought, I'll drive down later, because I had to go out later. I'll drive down later and see if it's still there. And that was the thought to myself. I won't act on it. I'll drive down later. And when I got in the car later on to go where I needed to go, I forgot all about him. And I just felt later on, it come to my remembrance. I felt terrible about it. Just thinking, I'm not even the queen. I'm not even in this palace, or having a great life like Esther, and yet I forgot about this guy, and I don't know, we probably, I don't know, maybe it's just me, you never forget about people, but don't you feel terrible when the Lord presents an opportunity to do something and you don't follow through on it? Anyway, so for me it was just something that I thought, oh, there's one that got away, and I pray the Lord will, like it says here, that we'll hear the gospel from someone else. Anyway, where will we go next? Verse 15, then Esther bade them return to Mordecai this answer, go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. And here, so you read of, what I'm saying, just these characters, these good people, of how, they want to act on faith, they want to do something, and there's this preparation that they're looking at. Okay, I'm going to go in unto the king, but I'm not going to do it by myself. Let's seek the Lord together. So for 3 days, they're going to fast. No eating, no drinking. We do a fast probably 4 times a year, but we always drink, I drink water. But to go 3 days where you're not eating or drinking too, I mean, physically you would be feeling the effects, I'm sure. But I suppose it's that show of humility and sincerity to seek the Lord about a situation and to want His hand to be in it, that God would bless as well. So that was the plan. And in chapter 5, we can read about how Esther finds favour in the sight of the king when she goes into the court. And then she says to the king about, I want to prepare a couple of banquets for you and Haman. And Haman is the one who wants to wipe out the Jews, doesn't like Mordecai. And Haman, he loves the idea as well when he goes in for the first banquet that Esther's prepared. He's loving it, he's so happy about this position that he's been elevated to. And then he sees Mordecai, the king's gate, and Mordecai doesn't even stand up or acknowledges him, and it really annoys him, so much so when he gets home, he tells his wife and his friends. And I don't know how many likes when you have a bad day. Maybe they can acknowledge. Really joking, but a situation happens. You just love coming home and telling them your wife, and it's just nice to have that support. And then your wife sometimes gives you some good encouragement on how you should look at a situation. So that's always healthy. Anyway, verse 14. Then said Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him, let a galley be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon, and then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. So his wife and his friends, this is of Haman, says, well, that Mordecai, why don't you, in this banquet, we'll make these gallows to get rid of Mordecai, and why don't you organise that, and when you're in the banquet, just let the king know and get it done, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's his plan. And we come across to chapter 6, and verse 1, so the king has a sleepless night, and he's very privileged. He's able to have someone reading a book. When I have a sleepless night, I don't really have the same thing happen to me. But anyway, verse 1, on that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king, and it was found written that Mordecai had told of and Teresh, 2 of the king's chamberlains, officers, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honour and dignity had been done to Mordecai for this. Then said the king's servant that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. And so, he's reminded of how, this assassination attempt on his life had failed, and that Mordecai was the one who warned the king through Esther, and no reward was given to him. And then in verse 4, and so we've got Haman now, who's coming into the king and wanting to speak to him about hanging Mordecai. So, Haman's sort of in that mindset, I want to speak to the king, want to get rid of Mordecai. And the king's thinking about, well, Mordecai, we need to give him a reward. So, they're sort of on two different pages, I suppose. And verse 5, the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court, and the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honour? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honour more than to myself? So Haman is feeling pretty chuffed. He's been elevated into the kingdom there. He's getting to eat with the queen and the king. No one else is around, and he's thinking, well, the king obviously wants to reward me. I'm fantastic. And in verse 7, and Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honour, let the royal apparel be bought which the king uses to wear, and the horses that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horses be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array them the man withal whom the king delighteth to honour, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honour. So, Haman didn't sell it short. He wanted this. Had the king delighted him, let him be, exalted, lifted up, so everyone can see him. And in verse 10, then the king said to Haman, make haste and take thy the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai, the Jew. So you can imagine Haman, that sitteth at the king's gate, let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. And then took Haman the apparel, just makes me laugh, sorry, just reading this, and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on the horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honour. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house, mourning and having his head covered. So Haman wasn't feeling too good about the day. But it would have been, surprising for the people at the time too. We're hearing that Mordecai with Jewish people are all going to get, killed. And then you've got Mordecai, who's just going through the streets in apparel and on horseback and being promoted. So it would have looked interesting to the people at the time, what was sort of going on. And then you've got, Haman here, who is just struggling with what's just happened. He's getting some gallows made to hang Mordecai, and next minute he's, adorning him with apparel. I don't know if he was helping him out with, putting on the boots and whatever else there, getting the horse ready, anyway, he's just had a bad day. And where should we go next? I suppose just this, maybe just to finish on, don't want to take up too much time tonight. Like when you read in Esther chapter 7, the second banquet happens, and so Esther has prepared this lovely banquet, and the king goes in, and Haman as well, and Esther then, the king's enjoying himself and asks, well, Esther, what is it that you want me to do for you, type of thing, and I'll give you up to half of the kingdom. And she talks about how that someone is threatening her life and her people's life, and the king's like, well, who's doing this? And then she reveals that it's actually Haman that's doing it. and so she reveals that her identity, being a Jew, and then Haman is just, he's quite concerned about the situation because the king sort of leaves in his anger, and then when he comes back in, he sees Haman. Somehow Haman made himself towards the bed of Esther as well, and that doesn't sit well with the king either, and so the king decides to hang Haman on the gallows that were made for Mordecai, and so just once again seeing, I suppose, God work through this impossible situation of how Haman had sort of tried to engineer destroying God's people, and Mordecai, who made a stand for what was right, and yet his plan came undone because God didn't allow it. And so, and the other thing you can read on about Mordecai too, that obviously the Jews were delivered. There was no what is it when you wipe, genocide, isn't it, when you wipe out a whole heap of people, a race of people. And Mordecai was promoted. You can read in chapter 10 of him being next to the king as well. So God really came through like an impossible circumstance. And even for Esther at that last banquet, to be able to follow through, to speak to the king in front of Haman as well. I mean, it would be quite a nerve-wracking experience to sort of be able to bring that up to see how the king would respond as well. I don't know if she knew that Mordecai had, been through horseback, in apparel there through the streets, but yet these people, I don't know, just they rose to the challenge of the situation, and they just went with the Lord, and God blessed. I'll leave it there. Amen.